As I've said before, my domain of expertise really is in sort of UK politics. However, from time to time, we have covered things going on in the US. We've obviously covered bits and pieces going on in Ukraine, and of course, now and again around the world. However, at the moment, what is happening in Niger uh, is really, really worrying. So here's a quick primer to go over what happened. So a couple of weeks ago now, there was a coup, and the military took over and currently still hold captive the democratically elected president of that country. Since then, he has been sort of held hostage. I don't think the military really know what they want to do. In fact, that's one thing that has signaled this coup, that they almost sort of didn't really know what they wanted to do, and almost some people expected they didn't maybe expect to be that successful. But even then, they have not really put forward a plan of what they want to do themselves now that they have taken power. And of course, there are other sort of African countries that have gone, hey, you cannot do this. This is wrong. And even countries, especially in France, because they have a military base there. They've also got sort of an embassy there. You've seen recently they've been evacuating people from there because in this sort of the coup movement, there have been sort of a lot of anti France feelings. Obviously, this comes from colonial times, but this could certainly lead to some sort of potential, maybe Western involvement. We don't know. We'd have to see how things, shape out in all this. But as we said, these Western African countries have been very much so. You cannot do this. You are sort of damaging your own democracy. Even the, like I say, the military junta that has sort of taken over, still themselves don't really see. Almost have been a very bit confused now that they've sort of taken power. They've very much been sort of the proverbial dog chasing the ambulance. They've been chasing the ambulance out of the fun for it, and now they've caught the ambulance. Now, like, I don't know what to do. So this is really the situation, and to be honest, unfortunately, this could get pretty deadly and could bring a lot of chaos, really, to a region that is somewhat unstable, especially the fact that you've got ISIS and Al Qaeda operating in this region. And of course, if chaos comes to this region and there is any sort of vacuum of power, then they will absolutely love to fill that position. So this is one of those certain points in time where we don't know what might happen, but if whatever might happen could be, we could hope at least, uh, be peaceful, and that the military junta sort of say, well, instead we're going to have this sort of transition to maybe an all civilian government. Uh, who knows? Maybe they sort of make a deal with the president, sort of they reinstate him, but they say, oh well, we want you to do this. Um, we don't really know. And like I say, you've got those other West African countries that have said, well, if you don't reinstate your president, we will, consider military intervention. And this is one of the things that is coming up, is that there is a deadline closing for that exact thing. And worryingly, of course, Mali and I can't remember which is the other country now. Mali and Burkina Faso have said that if there is military intervention from these West African countries, they will join on the side of the military junta of Nigeria, because they themselves recently have had coups that are run by military leaders currently in the moment. So this is generally looking like it might be somewhat of a serious dust up over there. And this will have, I think, very, very big consequences. And in many ways, this could lead to conflict on Africa on a very, very large scale, that certainly hasn't been seen before for quite some time, at least certainly not since the Second World War. So this conflict could get quite big if it kicks off. And like I say, that's why I've said we need to hope for a peaceful solution in this. But of course, um, Russia will play a part in this. Wagner forces are there in Mali. They've just taken them on. They're there in Burkina Faso. They're there in Africa in quite a significant presence in Africa. So they will certainly be taking part. As we've said before many times about Wagner, their whole reason for being in Africa is to, loot and pillage whatever they want. We've seen them take over gold mines, all kinds of different mines, and basically just start stealing anything in Africa that's not nailed down. And this ends up back in the Russian war chest, which is why we've seen them being so desperate to get back to Africa, because being in Ukraine's not that profitable for them. So this will the Wagner element will certainly come into play here. We can hope certainly for some form of peaceful resolution, but of course, as this deadline nears, it could come with some pretty significant consequences for the region. And as you can see here, the first hope is that the deadline is going to get extended. That's possible. That maybe that because they already have a delegation there, there could be some sort of extension to this deadline because they are in the middle of negotiating. So they extend the deadline. That is possible. The second one, of course, is the one that we sort of hope for, which is an agreement of a timetable for transition. So we would say this would when they could sort of release the president and sort of maybe bring them sort of back into power as they sort of transition power back. We really just sort of don't know what could happen there. Of course, holding elections, that could in itself be fraught with a lot of problems. If they decide to maybe go on that sort of transition power, and then of course the final one is military intervention, and I've said that could be pretty catastrophic for that region and involve a lot of countries and a lot of fighting in that region, which we haven't seen for quite some time. But we'll have to see what happens in that regard. But like I say, this is something we're just going to have to sit, wait, and watch. But it's, as it says there, it is decision time for West Africa as this deadline nears, and we can only hope that there is a peaceful solution that comes out of this. Otherwise, you could be seeing a pretty big conflict erupt in certainly Western Central-ish Africa. So yeah, we can only hope here for hopefully a very peaceful resolution. So as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.